I never thought I'd be writing one of these posts, but here I am at 2 a.m., unable to sleep because of what happened tonight. I'm a 28-year-old marketing coordinator who just got promoted to senior marketing manager at a pretty well-known tech company. This promotion was huge for me. It came with a $15,000 salary bump and better benefits, and honestly, it felt like validation after 2 years of busting my at this place. My husband, Heath, and I have been married for 3 years, and his mom, Eve, has always been, let's call it, complicated. She's one of those people who has an opinion about everything and isn't shy about sharing it. Usually I just nod and smile, but this time was different. When I told Heath about my promotion 2 weeks ago, he was over the moon. We decided to throw a celebration party because honestly, this felt like a major milestone in my career. I'd been stuck in coordinator roles for 5 years at different companies, always getting passed over for promotions. This felt like my moment. We started planning immediately. I wanted something nice, but not over the top. Maybe 40 to 50 people, including family, close friends, and a few work colleagues. Heath suggested this beautiful event space downtown. It's not super fancy, but it's got this gorgeous view of the city skyline. And they do really good catering. The whole thing would cost us about $3,500, which was definitely a stretch, but we figured my promotion bonus would cover most of it. That's when Eve got involved. Heath mentioned our plans during our weekly family dinner, and she immediately got this weird look on her face. She started going on about how throwing a big party for a work promotion was tacky and showed poor character. According to her, celebrating professional achievements so publicly was basically bragging and would make people think I was full of myself. I tried to explain that this wasn't just any promotion. This was a big deal for my career and something I'd worked really hard for. She just kept shaking her head and saying things like, in my day, we didn't need to throw parties every time something good happened. And real success speaks for itself. But Eve didn't stop there. Over the next few days, she kept texting Heath asking if we'd reconsider the party. She even called me directly, which she never does, to suggest we just do a quiet family dinner instead. When I politely declined, she got more persistent. She started bringing up money, saying we should be saving for a house instead of wasting it in one night. She brought up how it might make other family members feel bad about their own careers. She even said that my work friends probably didn't really want to celebrate with me and were just being polite. The whole thing was exhausting. Heath was caught in the middle, and I could tell it was stressing him out. His family is really close-knit, and Eve's opinion carries a lot of weight. But I stood my ground. This promotion represented years of hard work, dealing with difficult clients, staying late, taking on extra projects, and honestly, proving myself in a male-dominated industry. I deserved to celebrate it however I wanted. We went ahead with the planning. I sent out invitations, booked the caterer, arranged for flowers, the whole 9 yards. Eve stopped mentioning it directly, but I could feel her disapproval whenever we were around her. Heath's dad seemed fine with it, and Heath's younger brother, Matt, didn't seem to care one way or the other. The party was scheduled for last Saturday night. Everything was going smoothly until Friday afternoon when Eve called Heath in what he described as a complete panic. She was practically begging him to cancel the party, saying it would be a huge mistake and that we'd regret it. When Heath asked why she was so upset, she just kept saying we needed to trust her and find a different venue. Heath was confused, and honestly, so was I. Eve had been weird about the party from the beginning, but this felt different, more urgent. He asked if she knew something about the rooftop garden that we didn't, like if they had bad reviews or health code violations or something. She just kept insisting we needed to change venues immediately. By this point, it was less than 24 hours before the party. Even if we wanted to change venues, it would have been nearly impossible. Most places were already booked for Saturday night and we'd already paid deposits. I told Heath that unless Eve could give us a real reason, we were going ahead as planned. Saturday evening arrived and I was actually excited despite all the drama. I'd gotten my hair done, bought a new dress, and felt really good about celebrating this achievement. Heath and I arrived at the venue around 6 p.m. to make sure everything was set up properly. And that's when I saw him, Matt. Heath's younger brother was behind the bar wearing a black shirt and apron, clearly working as part of the serving staff. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Matt had told us he was working part-time while finishing his degree at UT, but he'd always been vague about where. Now I understood why Eve had been so adamant about canceling the party. She didn't want her younger son to be seen serving drinks and appetizers at his sister-in-law's celebration. The whole thing was mortifying, but not for the reasons Eve probably thought. I felt terrible that Matt was going to have to work at our party. Here he was, probably making $12 an hour plus tips, having to serve our guests, while his family celebrated. It felt awkward and uncomfortable, but the party was starting in an hour and people were already on their way. Matt saw us come in and his face went bright red. He came over and tried to play it off, saying he'd requested to work this event when he saw it on the schedule because he wanted to make sure everything went perfectly for us. But I could tell he was embarrassed and I felt awful. Heath was furious, but not at Matt. He was angry that his mom had put us all in this position by not just explaining the situation from the beginning. If we'd known Matt worked there, we could have easily chosen a different venue or at least given him the night off. But it was too late to change anything. Our guests started arriving at 7 p.m. and I had to put on a smile and pretend everything was fine. Most people didn't know Matt, so they had no idea there was any awkwardness. But our families definitely noticed. Eve showed up looking like she was attending a funeral instead of a celebration. Heath's dad kept giving her disapproving looks. My parents, who don't know the family drama, kept commenting on how great the service was and how professional the staff seemed. The whole night felt surreal. Matt was incredibly professional, but I could see how uncomfortable he was every time he had to serve someone from our family. At one point, my dad tried to tip him extra, and Matt looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Eve barely spoke to anyone and left early with some excuse about having a headache. Heath spent most of the night apologizing to me and Matt, even though none of this was really his fault. The party itself was actually really nice. My work friends were genuinely happy for me, and it felt good to celebrate with people who understood how big this promotion was. But the family drama cast a shadow over everything. After everyone left and we were settling the bill, Matt came over to talk to us. He apologized for not telling us he worked there and said he'd been hoping to switch shifts but couldn't find anyone to cover. He also mentioned that Eve had been calling the restaurant all week, trying to find out if there was any way to get him transferred to a different location for the night, which explains some of her panic. The ride home was quiet. Heath felt guilty about the whole situation, and I felt like maybe Eve had been right about not having the party. Not because celebrating was wrong, but because we inadvertently put Matt in an uncomfortable position. The next morning, Eve called Heath and absolutely tore into him. She said I was a heartless egomaniac who had planned this whole thing on purpose to humiliate Matt. She claimed I must have known he worked there and chosen that venue specifically to show off my success while he served drinks. She said it was cruel and vindictive and that she'd never been so disappointed in Heath for allowing it. Heath tried to explain that we genuinely had no idea Matt worked there, but Eve wasn't hearing it. She said even if that was true, a decent person would have cancelled the party the moment they saw him there. She said the fact that I went ahead with it anyway proved what kind of person I really was. Now, Heath's family is split. His dad thinks Eve is being ridiculous and that she created this whole mess by not being honest from the beginning. Matt himself has been texting Heath, saying he doesn't blame us and that his mom is overreacting. But Eve is telling anyone who will listen that I deliberately humiliated her son, and apparently some extended family members are taking her side. Heath is caught in the middle, and I can tell it's really affecting him. He keeps apologizing and saying he should have pushed harder for an explanation when Eve was acting so strange, but I keep thinking about what she said, that a decent person would have cancelled the party. Should I have? Was I being selfish by going ahead with it once I saw Matt there? I worked really hard for this promotion. I don't think wanting to celebrate it makes me a bad person, but I also never wanted to make anyone uncomfortable, especially not Heath's brother. Eve is acting like I planned this whole thing to embarrass Matt, which is absolutely not true. But now I'm wondering if I handled the situation wrong. The whole thing has me questioning everything. Was Eve right about the party being inappropriate? Should I have cancelled it the moment I saw Matt? Am I really a heartless egomaniac, or is Eve just trying to make me feel guilty for celebrating my success? I honestly don't know anymore, and it's eating me up inside. Update 1. I posted this 3 days ago and got a lot of responses telling me I wasn't wrong and that Eve created this situation by not being upfront from the beginning. A lot of people said I should talk to Matt directly to make sure he was really okay with everything, so that's what I did. Yesterday I asked Heath if he thought Matt would be willing to meet me for coffee. I wanted to apologize in person and make sure that there were no hard feelings. He thought it was a good idea and texted his brother, who agreed to meet me this afternoon. Matt and I met at this little cafe near campus, and honestly, the conversation went better than I expected. He immediately started apologizing for the whole situation and said he felt terrible that his work had caused drama in the family. I told him he had nothing to apologize for, and I was the one who felt bad. We talked for about an hour, and he explained more about what happened. He's been working at that place for about 6 months, mostly weekend shifts to help pay for school. He said he genuinely didn't mind working our party, and that he was actually proud to be part of celebrating my promotion. According to him, the only awkward part was knowing his mom was upset about it. Matt also told me something that really surprised me. He said Eve had been calling the restaurant multiple times, asking about scheduling and trying to get him moved to a different location that night. But what he found out later was that she never actually told the management that it was her son's family event. She just kept saying there was a conflict of interests without explaining what it was. The managers were confused and basically told her that unless Matt requested the time off himself, they couldn't accommodate special scheduling requests from random callers. When Matt found out about this, he was actually pretty annoyed with his mom. He said if she just talked to him directly, he could have easily requested the night off or switched with another server. Instead, she made it into this big dramatic thing without actually solving the problem. But here's the part that really got to me. Matt said that Eve had been complaining about my attitude regarding the promotion for weeks. Apparently, she'd been telling people in their extended family that I was getting too big for my britches and that the promotion was going to my head. She'd been painting me as this arrogant person who thought she was better than everyone else, even before the party planning started. This hit me hard because I've always tried to have a good relationship with Eve. I mean, we've had our differences, but I never thought she actively disliked me. Matt said he didn't think she necessarily disliked me as a person, but that she had some weird hang-ups about women in professional careers. He mentioned that she'd made similar comments about his female cousins who had successful jobs, always implying that career success made women less feminine or family-oriented. Matt also told me that Eve had been particularly sensitive about him working service jobs because she was embarrassed about it. She apparently grew up in a family where the men were expected to be the primary breadwinners, and having her son working as a server while going to school felt like a reflection on her parenting to her. He said she'd been pressuring him to quit and focus only on school, even though he needed the money. By the end of our conversation, I felt a lot better about the whole situation. Matt was genuinely fine with everything and said he actually thought the party was really nice. He also said he was planning to talk to his mom about how her actions had affected everyone, which I appreciated. When I got home and told Heath about the conversation, he was relieved but also pretty angry with his mom. He said he was tired of her creating drama and then playing the victim when things didn't go her way. He decided he was going to have a serious talk with her about boundaries and how her behavior was affecting our marriage. So that's where things stood as of yesterday. I felt like maybe we could move past this whole thing and get back to normal. I was wrong. This morning, Heath got a call from his dad that changed everything. Apparently, Eve had been so worked up about our conversation with Matt that she decided to take matters into her own hands. Yesterday evening, she drove to the restaurant and demanded to speak to the manager about unprofessional conduct that occurred during our event. According to Eve's dad, Eve told the management that Matt had been forced to work under duress at a family event and that the restaurant should have policies preventing such conflicts of interest. She complained that having him work our party was inappropriate and that the restaurant bore some responsibility for the awkward situation. But here's where it gets really crazy. Eve also apparently suggested that Matt had been uncomfortable serving alcohol to family members and that this might have violated some kind of workplace regulation. She kept pushing the manager to admit that they had handled the situation poorly. The manager, understandably confused by this whole thing, decided to pull Matt aside when he came in for his next shift this morning to ask about the complaint. Matt was mortified. He had to explain that his mom had come in without his knowledge and that he hadn't made any complaints about working the event. But the damage was already done, and the manager told Matt that they take family conflict issues seriously and that they needed to avoid any appearance of impropriety. They said that while Matt wasn't in trouble, they thought it would be best if he transferred to their other location across town to avoid any future family-related incidents. The new location would add an extra 45 minutes to Matt's commute each way, which is a big deal when you're juggling work and school. Plus, he's been building good relationships with the managers and regular customers at the previous restaurant. And starting over somewhere new would mean losing those connections and probably some of his better shifts. Matt called Heath this morning absolutely furious with his mom. He said Eve had essentially gotten him transferred from a job he liked because she couldn't handle her own embarrassment about the situation. He was also worried that having a family conflict issue in his file might affect his standing with the company long term. Heath immediately called his mom, and they had what he described as the biggest fight they'd ever had. Eve tried to justify her actions by saying she was protecting Matt's professional reputation, but Heath wasn't buying it. He told her that she had created every single problem in this situation, and that her actions were now actively hurting Matt's job. Eve got defensive and started bringing up all the same arguments about me being an egomaniac and how I should have cancelled the party. She said that if I really cared about Matt, I would have made different choices and that everything that happened was ultimately my fault for being selfish. He finally lost it and told his mom she needed to stay out of our lives until she could learn to treat me with respect. He said he was tired of her constant criticism and drama, and that her behavior was affecting not just our marriage, but Matt's livelihood as well. Eve hung up on him, and we haven't heard from her since. Eve's dad called later to apologize for Eve's behavior and said he was going to try to convince her to call the restaurant and clear up the situation. But he also warned us that Eve was telling everyone who would listen that Heath was choosing his wife over his family, and that I had somehow orchestrated this whole thing. I felt absolutely terrible. Matt is dealing with job consequences because of the drama that started with my promotion party. Heath is in a terrible position with his family, and Eve is apparently more convinced than ever that I'm some kind of manipulative villain. The worst part is that I'm starting to second guess everything. Maybe I should have just done the quiet family dinner Eve suggested from the beginning. Maybe throwing a big party really was inappropriate. Maybe I'm too focused on my career and not considering enough of other people's feelings. Heath keeps telling me that none of this is my fault and his mom has a pattern of creating problems and then blaming everyone else. But I can't shake the feeling that I had just made different choices. None of this would have happened. I don't even know what I'm looking for by posting this update. I guess I just need to get it all out because it's been eating me alive. Has anyone else dealt with family members who create drama and then somehow make you feel like you're the problem? How do you handle situations where celebrating your own success somehow becomes controversial? Update 2. Hi guys, it's been 2 days since I wrote my last update and I honestly thought things couldn't get more dramatic. I was wrong. Yesterday morning, Heath got a call from Matt asking if we could all meet for lunch. He sounded stressed on the phone, and Heath was worried something else had happened with the job situation. We agreed to meet at this sandwich place near Matt's campus. When we got there, Matt looked exhausted. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking about everything that had happened. He needed to tell us something important. What he said next completely changed my understanding of this whole situation. Matt told us that our party wasn't the first time Eve had interfered with his job. About 2 months ago, she had shown up at the restaurant unannounced during one of his shifts. She ordered a drink and sat at the bar for over an hour, watching him work. When she left, she pulled him aside and told him she was disappointed that he was working in the service industry and that it reflected poorly on the family. But it gets worse. Matt said that Eve had been asking him detailed questions about his work schedule for weeks before our party. She wanted to know which events he worked, what kind of people came to the restaurant, and whether he ever had to serve alcohol to people who were celebrating inappropriately. At the time, he thought she was just being her usual nosy self, but now he realized she was gathering information. Then Matt dropped a bomb that made everything click into place. He said that Eve had actually called his workplace 3 weeks before our party, not to try to get his schedule changed, but to specifically ask if they had any large parties booked for our date. When they confirmed there was an event that night, she asked if she could find out who was hosting it. The restaurant obviously couldn't give out that information, but Eve kept calling back with different stories about why she needed to know. She even claimed at one point that she was a vendor trying to deliver something to the event host. When that didn't work, she apparently showed up in person and tried to get information from the other staff members. Matt found all of this out when one of his co-workers mentioned that some woman had been asking weird questions about their events, and specifically about him. When the co-worker described Eve, Matt realized what was happening. So here's the truth. Eve knew exactly where Matt worked, and she deliberately didn't tell us because she wanted to see what we would do. She was testing whether I would go ahead with the party once I saw Matt there. And when I did, it confirmed everything she already believed about me being selfish and inconsiderate. I felt sick listening to this. The whole thing had been a setup from the beginning. Eve hadn't been trying to protect Matt's feelings. She'd been trying to create a situation where I would look bad no matter what I did. But Matt wasn't finished. He said that after our coffee conversation earlier this week, he had started paying more attention to things Eve said about me and Heath's relationship. He realized that she'd been making subtle negative comments about me for months, always framed as concern for Heath's well-being. According to Matt, Eve had been telling family members that I was too ambitious and that my career focus was going to hurt Heath's chances of having a traditional family life. She'd been planting seeds of doubt about whether I was really committed to the marriage or if I was just using Heath as a stepping stone while I climbed the corporate ladder. The promotion party became her opportunity to prove her point. In her mind, if I was really a good wife and sister-in-law, I would have been so mortified by the situation with Matt that I would have immediately cancelled everything. The fact that I went ahead with it proved that I prioritized my own celebration over family harmony. Heath was absolutely furious. He'd suspected his mom didn't fully approve of me, but he had no idea she'd been actively working to undermine our relationship. He immediately called Eve and confronted her about what Matt had told us. Eve initially denied everything, but when Heath pressed her with specific details, she finally admitted to some of it. She said she had been keeping an eye on the situation because she was concerned about Matt's job, but she insisted she never intended to cause problems. When Heath asked her directly if she had known Matt worked at our venue before we booked it, there was a long pause, and then she said that she might have known, but it shouldn't have mattered if we were really considerate people. Heath told her that her behavior was manipulative and dishonest, and that she owed both Matt and me a serious apology. Eve got defensive and said that everything she'd done was out of love for her family, and that if I couldn't handle a little test of my character, then maybe I wasn't right for Heath after all. That was apparently the last straw for Heath. He told his mom that her test backfired because it had shown him exactly what kind of person she really was. He said that until she was ready to genuinely apologize and stop trying to sabotage our marriage, she wasn't welcome in our lives. Eve started crying and saying that Heath was breaking her heart by choosing me over his own mother. Heath replied that she was the one forcing him to choose by refusing to accept his wife and constantly creating drama. When Heath told me about this conversation, I didn't know whether to feel vindicated or just sad. On one hand, it was a relief to know that I hadn't been imagining Eve's hostility and that the whole party situation really wasn't my fault. On the other hand, it was devastating to realize that my mother-in-law had been actively working against me for months. But the story doesn't end there. This morning, Heath's dad called with news that nobody saw coming. Apparently, Eve's behavior has been causing problems beyond just our situation. Heath's dad told us that Eve had also been interfering in Matt's relationship with his girlfriend. She'd been calling the girlfriend's parents to express concerns about whether their daughter was right for Matt. And she'd even contacted Matt's professors to ask about his academic performance because she was worried his job was affecting his grades. Matt's girlfriend found out about the calls to her parents and was furious. She told Matt that she couldn't deal with his mother's interference and they needed to take a break from their relationship until he could set some boundaries. Heath's dad said that when he found out about all of this, he had a serious conversation with Eve about her behavior. He told her that she was pushing away both of her sons with her need to control everything, and that she needed to get professional help to deal with whatever was driving her to act this way. Eve apparently broke down and admitted that she'd been struggling with feeling irrelevant as her sons became more independent. She said she felt like she was losing her family and that interfering in their lives was her way of staying important to them. Heath's dad said Eve has agreed to start seeing a counselor, but he also warned us that it might be a long process and that we shouldn't expect any immediate changes. He apologized on Eve's behalf and said he understood if we needed to maintain distance from her for a while. Update 3. So here we are. The promotion party that was supposed to be a simple celebration turned into a massive family drama that revealed years of manipulation and interference. Matt is still dealing with the job transfer situation, though his managers said they might be able to move him back to the original location once things settle down. Heath and I are closer than ever because going through this together showed us that we can handle major challenges as a team, but we're also both dealing with the sadness of realizing that Eve may never be able to accept me or respect our marriage. The weirdest part is that I actually feel sorry for Eve now. I can't excuse her behavior, but I understand that it came from a place of fear and insecurity rather than pure malice. That doesn't make what she did okay, but it makes it easier to process. I've learned a lot from this whole experience. I learned that celebrating your achievements isn't selfish, even when other people try to make you feel guilty about it. I learned that sometimes family drama says more about the people creating it than it does about you. And I learned that having a partner who truly has your back makes all the difference in the world. I don't know what the future holds with Eve. Maybe counseling will help her understand how her behavior affects other people. Maybe she'll learn to accept that her sons are adults who get to make their own choices. Or maybe Heath and I will have to maintain boundaries with her indefinitely. What I do know is that I'm not going to apologize for being proud of my accomplishments or for wanting to celebrate them. Life is hard enough without dimming your own light to make other people comfortable. My promotion party might have caused drama, but it also helped me understand who I can count on and who truly supports my success. And honestly, despite everything that happened, I'm still proud of that promotion. I worked hard for it. I deserved it. And I'm glad I celebrated it the way I wanted to. Sometimes standing up for yourself means dealing with conflict. But that doesn't mean you were wrong to stand up in the first place. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.